A manager sits in a glass-walled meeting room reviewing two names on a promotion list. Both employees have similar performance ratings, both delivered their projects, both stayed late when needed. On paper, there is no obvious difference, but the decision is already forming before anyone speaks. One name is mentioned first, not because of output, but because of perception. Reliable, easy to work with, low friction. The other name comes with a pause. Strong performer, but sometimes difficult to align cross-functionally. Nothing here is about skill in the way most people imagine it. No one is measuring raw intelligence or effort in isolation. What's being evaluated is something far less visible and far more decisive. Meanwhile, the employee not getting promoted is at their desk thinking something very different is happening. They believe the system is still reviewing performance, still comparing results, still deciding fairly based on merit, numbers, and consistency. They assume the outcome is not yet determined. But in most corporate environments, the outcome was never truly open. It was shaped long before the meeting even started. And this is the first skill universities never teach you. You are not evaluated when your work is finished. You are evaluated continuously, through perception, narrative, and internal positioning, whether you know it or not. If you want to understand the hidden rules of work before they cost you, subscribe. Most people enter the workforce with a simple belief. If you perform well, you will move forward. If you deliver results, recognition follows. If you are competent, the system eventually adjusts in your favor. That belief is not entirely wrong, but it is structurally incomplete. Because corporate systems do not reward performance in isolation, they reward interpreted performance. And interpretation is shaped by visibility, timing, internal politics, and how your work is framed when you are not in the room. This is where the first major disconnect happens. Two employees can produce identical results, but the one whose work is more easily explained upward, more easily summarized in a leadership meeting, often advances faster. Not because they did more, but because their contribution travels better through the organization. Universities rarely teach this because they assume output is self-evident. In real organizations, output is filtered through layers of managers, stakeholders, and perception gates. By the time it reaches decision makers, it has already been rewritten in subtle ways. And once you understand this, you start to see the real system. Inside most companies, there is an invisible structure operating alongside the official one. Officially, there are job descriptions, KPIs, performance reviews, and promotion cycles. Unofficially, there are reputation systems, signal economies, and trust hierarchies. Your performance is only one input. Your signal is another. A signal is what people believe about your work when they are not directly reviewing it. It is built through consistency, communication style, responsiveness, meeting presence, and how often your name is associated with low-risk outcomes. This is why someone who is good enough but highly visible often progresses faster than someone who is exceptional but structurally invisible. What makes this harder to see is that companies rarely admit they operate this way. Everything is still framed as merit-based, but internally, decisions are made under uncertainty, and humans reduce uncertainty through trust, familiarity, and narrative shortcuts. There is a second layer to this. Even managers are not purely independent decision makers. They operate under constraints, limited promotion slots, budget ceilings, headcount pressure, and pressure from their own leadership to reduce risk. That means they are not selecting the best employee. They are selecting the safest narrative to justify upward. So the real question becomes, who is easiest to explain as a promotion? Not who worked hardest, not who is most talented, but who creates the least friction in the story that leadership needs to tell. This is where invisible consequences begin to form. Over time, employees who do not manage their signal properly start to accumulate a specific type of career friction. They are included in work, but not in narratives. They are relied upon, but not remembered. They become operationally essential, but strategically invisible. And this is one of the most dangerous positions in a corporate structure. because visibility is not about attention, it is about leverage. If your work cannot be clearly described upward in a way that strengthens a manager's decision, your value becomes harder to convert into promotion currency. That leads to a pattern most people only recognize too late. You work more, you get trusted more, you get assigned more responsibility, but your career progression slows. From the outside, it looks like growth. Structurally, it is stagnation disguised as importance. Another hidden skill universities never teach is timing intelligence. Companies do not evaluate continuously in a smooth line. They evaluate in windows. Promotion cycles, calibration meetings, budget reviews, and restructuring phases create discrete moments where perception gets frozen into decisions. If your strongest work happens outside these windows, it often carries less weight than weaker work that happens inside them. That means timing is not just operational, it is strategic. And yet most employees operate as if all work is evaluated equally at all times. There is also a deeper mechanism at play: internal comparison. No employee is judged in isolation. Every evaluation is relative. Even high performance can be downgraded if someone else in the same pool is slightly easier to promote, slightly more aligned with leadership language, or slightly more trusted by adjacent teams. This creates a quiet reality inside companies. You are not only competing against your role expectations, you are competing against narratives about other people. And narratives are not objective. They are shaped by proximity, communication style, and how often someone's work is visible in decision-making spaces. Most employees never realize that their career trajectory is being shaped less by their output and more by how often they enter rooms where decisions are discussed. The real system reward is not just execution, it is interpretability. If leadership cannot easily interpret your contribution in a sentence that fits their mental model, your impact becomes structurally harder to promote. This is why some highly technical or deeply competent employees plateau, not because their work lacks value, but because their value is expensive to translate upward. And in large organizations, translation cost matters. There is another layer most people miss entirely. Organizations do not just evaluate performance, they manage risk. Every promotion is a risk decision. Every salary increase is a bet on future behavior. Every leadership appointment is a prediction of stability under pressure. So the system quietly favors people who reduce uncertainty for others. That includes predictable communicators, low-friction collaborators, and individuals whose behavior aligns closely with established patterns. This is why consistency often outranks brilliance in real-world progression. Not because brilliance is unimportant, but because consistency is easier to model internally. Over time, this creates invisible consequences that accumulate silently. People begin to overwork to compensate for lack of visibility. They take on extra responsibility, hoping it will be noticed. They assume performance will eventually speak for itself, but performance does not speak. It is interpreted, and interpretation depends on structure, not effort. Eventually, some employees reach a point where they are doing significantly more than peers but receiving similar or lower recognition. At that stage, the system has already categorized them, not as low performers, but as stable contributors. And stable contributors are rarely prioritized for rapid advancement. This is the structural ceiling most people never identify directly. It does not announce itself. It emerges gradually through patterns of delayed recognition and unclear progression feedback. And the most confusing part is that feedback often remains positive. You may still be told you are doing well, you may still receive encouragement, but encouragement is not allocation. Allocation is what determines promotions, compensation bands, and strategic placement. The system can appreciate your work without elevating your position. This creates a psychological distortion where employees believe they are closer to advancement than they actually are. And because the signals are subtle, the pattern is hard to detect early. Reframing this changes everything. The issue is not that effort does not matter. It does. But effort is filtered through systems that prioritize signal clarity, interpretability, timing, and risk reduction. In other words, the system does not reward effort directly. It rewards effort that is easy to convert into organizational certainty. Once you see this, career progression stops looking like a straight merit path and starts looking like a signal optimization process inside a constrained decision system. And that is the part universities never teach. They prepare you to produce output, but not to position output inside systems of interpretation. They teach execution, but not visibility architecture. They teach competence, but not narrative leverage. Yet in most corporate environments, those are the skills that quietly determine who advances. Because in the end, organizations are not just evaluating work, they are evaluating how confidently they can explain you to someone else. And that leads to the final truth. Most employees only understand in hindsight. The system does not move based on what is true about your performance. It moves based on what is easiest to believe about it. And once that belief forms, it becomes the default path forward. The decision was often made long before you realized you were being evaluated.